Not a lot of
Friends
artists can
soon began to
seamlessly blend
notice.
pop, folk,
Fans
and country
noted that
music
his
while
lyrics
maintaining
got
exceptional
heavier.
lyricism.
And as he sat on the
Yet
Ajax
American
chair
singer
on
and
Aspen
songwriter
Mountain,
John Denver
the song
accomplished
just
exactly
came
that
to
and
him.
so much more.
But it
During his
confirmed
reign as one of the
something
most
that many
beloved
fans
acoustic
had
performers
felt,
of the
but never
1970s,
heard out loud.
he gave the world unforgettable hits such as Take Me
About
Home
not
Country Roads,
recognizing himself.
Leaving on a Jet Plane,
She
and
found
Annie's
his
Song,
celebrity
the
status
last
and
of which
everything
was a
that came
heartfelt
with it
tribute to his
threatening,
wife at the time,
with her
Annie
maintaining
Denver.
her single
Now,
status
at
to
the
this
age of
day.
78,
As the reports
Annie
of
Denver
John's
has finally
improper
broken her
behavior.
long silence and
There have been
confirmed the
rumors circulating
that
that
have swirled
Annie
around her
Martel
late
has already
ex-husband
died.
for decades.
Well,
While many
poor
people
Annie
only know of
stayed
Annie
home,
through her connection to the
trying her
iconic
hardest
singer,
to hold their
she is a
world
remarkable
together.
woman in her own right,
Many speculated
having
that his
served as a
darkness
school
ran deeper
commissioner
than
and
people
TV
knew.
personality.
I think my
Born
success
Annie
and my
Martel on
commitment to the
September
work
6,
that I do
1946,
certainly
to
had
Jim
an
and
effect
Norma
on
Martel in
Annie's and my
Minnesota.
relationship.
She grew up
Although
alongside
they were
three
a
siblings
short-lived
named
couple,
Linda, Terry,
it's not
and
often
Ben,
we get to see
all
an
raised
amicable
together in the Christian
separation
faith.
between two parties.
She completed her
Since
early
we've already
education
talked
in
about
Minnesota
Annie
before
Martel
enrolling
Denver,
at Aldous
it's
College
only
in
right
St.
that we
Peter.
also talk about her
And it was there
ex-husband,
that
John
fate
Denver.
brought her face to face
As
with a
part
man
of
who
it,
would
but
change
only
her
a year
life
later,
forever.
while
At the
still
time,
on probation,
Denver was performing as
John
part of the
crashed
Chad
his
Mitchell
Porsche
Trio
into
when the
a
two
tree
first
in
crossed paths
Aspen.
in 1966.
First time they lived the
Annie was
longest
a
in a certain
sophomore,
area
and
was when
Denver
his father was
immediately
stationed in
captivated by
Tucson,
her.
Arizona.
During a 2022
Denver was an
episode of the
introverted child,
Obituaries with Moa
and their
podcast,
family moving around
Annie
a lot
fondly
didn't
recalled
help.
how he was playing with
Denver
the Mitchell
recalled
Trio
his
that
father
evening,
as a stern
after
man
which he
who
picked
was
up
not
his guitar
openly
to join a
affectionate
group
to his
putting on a
children.
lighthearted little
His
musical.
parents were Emma
She
Louise and
laughingly
Captain
described
Henry
herself
John
as the girl
Dutch
who carried the
Deutschendorf
signs
Sr.
across the stage reading
as
Act
Henry
1 and
John
Act 2.
Deutschendorf
And
Jr.
she
in
noted that
Roswell, New
Denver never
Mexico.
forgot what she
But
was
he was
wearing
also
that night:
volatile,
a flannel shirt,
angry,
blue jeans,
and
and penny
lost.
loafers.
He
The
sang
two
about
quickly
home,
fell for each other,
but he rarely
kept in
stayed
touch
in
through
one
letters,
place.
and
Going
after
by
a
the name of
whirlwind
John
courtship
Denver,
of just 9
he
months,
continued playing
walked
even
down
as
the
he
aisle
attended
together on
Texas
June
Tech
9,
University in Lubbock.
1967.
At the time, he
Annie's
was
song
still using
remains
his
one of the
real
most
name
cherished
until the
songs in
founder of
John
the New
Denver's
Christy
catalog.
Minstrels,
And it was
Randy
this very
Sparks.
song that first introduced
But
Annie
he was
Martel,
saying people
now
wanted
Mrs.
John
Denver, to
be
the wider
simple.
world. What
A
makes it
clean-cut
especially
mountain man.
meaningful is that
It's
it wove
pleasing
together
to know that
everything
there's
Denver
lasting
held dear:
proof of the love
his
shared
passion
between
for music,
Annie and John Denver
his deep
through
love
this
for his
song.
wife, and his
And then an
reverence for the natural
inflexibility
world.
when we got back
Recently,
together to
Annie
sort of
confirmed what
integrate
fans
the
had
other's
long
life
wondered
into
about the
our own.
song's true origin and meaning,
Denver was playing at
revealing
folk
that even
clubs
now,
then, and
hearing
it took
still
2 more
brings her
years
to
before he
tears.
replaced
She
Chad
also
Mitchell
shared
in the
that
Chad
another
Mitchell
song close to
Trio.
her heart is
A
perhaps
boy with
Love,
a guitar,
a beautiful
and a girl
duet her
with soft
ex-husband
eyes
recorded with
and
Placido
steadier
Domingo.
feet.
Interestingly,
When John first
Annie's
met Annie
song
in the
did
late
not come from a moment
1960s,
of pure
she was
romantic
young,
bliss, as many might
thoughtful,
assume.
and
Its
content
birth was
to be
far
out of
more
the
complex.
spotlight.
The year
Which caught the
1973
attention of a
found the couple
producer,
settled in
Milt
Aspen,
Oken.
Colorado, a
It was
place they
then
had first
reworked.
discovered on a
Denver
camping
left
trip
the
with
band and
friends around
chose to pursue a
1971.
solo career.
The same year Denver
He released his
Take
first
Me Home
album
Country
titled
Roads.
He also went
Denver
to
had
radio
fallen
stations
deeply
that
in love
humored
with
him,
Aspen's
knowing he
landscapes,
was the composer
drawing
behind
inspiration
Leaving
that
on a
would
Jet
also
Plane,
fuel Rocky Mountain
embarking
High.
on a
And
Midwest
eventually
tour,
the couple made
giving
it their
out free
permanent home.
concerts,
One
and
day,
even offering
after
to
a
play
quarrel
for free
between
at
the
local
two,
venues.
They made
They got
peace, and
married
Denver
in
headed off in good
1967,
spirits to go
long
skiing.
before he
Sitting on the
became
Ajax
John Denver.
chairlift on Aspen Mountain,
He, on the
the
other
melody
hand,
and words simply
being
came
a
to him,
their hand,
and the
was
moment he
chasing
arrived
music.
home, he wrote it
Hopeful,
all down in less than
unknown,
10 minutes.
hungry.
As Annie
Though
herself
toxicology
described it,
reports
the
show
song
he was
began as a
sober
love
at the
letter meant
time
for
of
her
the fatal
alone,
crash,
but over time
revoked
it
his
seemed to
medical
take on a deeper,
certification
almost
in
spiritual
1995
significance
and
for John as
96,
well,
making him
becoming
legally
something closer to a
unfit to
prayer.
fly.
Though the
This is
couple was
quite
unable to
surprising,
have biological
especially
children,
if you know the
they poured their
scandals and
love into two
controversies that
adopted
surrounded
children,
her
a
ex-husband.
son named
Cutting their
Zachary
bed in
John
half
and a
with
daughter
a
named
chainsaw.
Anna Kate.
In
Sadly,
another,
despite the
he
beauty
said
of what
he
they
had
had built together,
nearly choked
their marriage
Annie out of
unraveled,
frustration.
and by 1982
John's
the
temper,
Denvers had filed
his
for
alleged
divorce,
affairs,
bringing their
and his
15-year
ego,
union
he
to a
admitted to
close.
feeling
Both
powerless
Annie
in
and
the
John
marriage.
had their own
He
perspectives on what
confessed
pulled them
to
apart.
moments
Of course, we
From
already
John's
know
point
that
of
Denver
view,
married
the
Annie
relentless
Martel and
demands of
divorced
his
her after
career
15
and the weight
years.
of his own success took a serious
The
toll
singer Singer
on the
zeroed
marriage.
in on doing
The
more
constant
humanitarian
touring kept
efforts
him away from
and
home
even
for long
donated to the
stretches.
Aspen Valley
And when he did
Hospital's
return,
$1.7
he
million
found it
capital
increasingly difficult to
campaign.
reconnect with the life
He took
Annie
part
was
in
maintaining in
fundraising
his
projects
absence.
by
In a
performing for the
candid
Aspen Camp
1983
School for
interview
the
on the
Deaf.
Russell Hardy
Were
Show,
turned off.
he reflected
He
that over the
became
final 4,
unpredictable.
5, or 6 years
He
of their
struggled
marriage,
with control,
they had drifted
with
apart,
anger.
weighed
She
down by the
raised her
time
children
spent separately
quietly,
and the struggle to fold
rebuilt
each
her
other's
life,
lives back
and
together
never
when
remarried.
reunited. Annie, for
And
her
even though
part,
Annie never
pointed
spoke
to a different
publicly,
kind of pain.
never wrote a tell-all,
She felt that they had
didn't
simply
take
been too young
interviews or
and
seek
unprepared
pity,
for the
she
overwhelming
retreated.
force of sudden
Court papers
superstardom.
requested
The fame
joint
that
custody.
surrounded John made her
At
feel
one point,
invisible,
although he
as
never
though she had
spoke
lost
about
her
Annie
own sense of
bitterly,
identity in
John's
the shadow of his
autobiography
celebrity.
captures his
In
bitterness
spite of
towards
everything,
Cassandra.
the two managed to
Other.
part ways on
He
reasonably
expressed
amicable
regret
terms,
over that period,
with Annie
and
choosing
even
never
though
to remarry
he
while
suffered
John
bouts of
eventually moved
depression
on
and
to
was
a second
actually
marriage.
insecure,
It is
despite
worth
his
noting
public
that rumors
persona.
have circulated online
Just like with
suggesting
his
Annie
first marriage
Martel
to
has
Annie,
passed away,
the family
but
seemed
these
happy
are
at
entirely
first,
false.
but things
She
soon
continues
began
to live
unravel.
quietly in Colorado,
He pleaded guilty to a
surrounded by her
drunk driving
children and
charge
grandchildren.
when he crashed his
the
Porsche
civility
into
she
a
has
tree,
maintained toward
and
her
later
former
that
husband,
year, they
even
married
in the face of all
Aspen.
that transpired,
But the relationship
speaks
was
volumes
rocky.
about her
No one
character.
really knows for sure,
Having painted
but
a
many
fuller
believe
picture
that
of Annie,
Denver's divorce
it
from
is
his
only
second
fitting
wife
to
was a
turn attention
catalyst
to
for many
John
of his
Denver
struggles in
himself.
later years.
He entered the world
After
on
the
December
divorce,
31st,
he remarried
1943,
briefly to
in
Cassandra
Roswell,
Delaney,
New Mexico.
an
Born
Australian
Henry John
actress and
Duchendorf Jr. to
singer-songwriter.
Emma Louise
He
and
met her
Captain
in
Henry
Sydney,
John Duchendorf
and after a
Sr.,
few short years
a highly
of courtship,
decorated military
they tied the
pilot.
knot in
John's
1988.
childhood was shaped by
The
constant
following year,
relocation due to
by
his father's career,
1982, the
and being a
marriage was
naturally
officially
introverted
over.
child. He
But
struggled to form
emotionally,
lasting
it had
friendships or
ended
feel
long
settled anywhere.
before.
The longest
He
stretch
tried
of
to cut
stability
their marital
he
bed in
experienced
half
growing up
with a
came when his
chainsaw.
father was stationed in Tucson,
However,
Arizona,
by this time,
where the family
their
lived from
relationship had
1951 to
graduated from emotional
1959.
distance
At
to
11
pain
years old,
and real
his
damage.
grandmother gave him an
It
acoustic
took a few more
guitar,
years before
and from
Denver
that
met his
moment
next
on,
wife,
music
the
became his
Australian
anchor.
Delaney gave
By
birth to a
college,
daughter
he was
named
skilled
Jessie
enough to
Bell
perform
in
at
May
local venues,
and settled in
and it was
Denver's
around this
Aspen
time
home.
that Randy Sparks,
But
founder of the New
unfortunately,
Christie
he
Minstrels,
didn't pull through.
encouraged him to adopt a
The
simpler
following
stage
year,
name,
was he
which is
trying
how
to
Henry
reclaim
Duchendorf
love
Jr.
or
became
escape
John
guilt?
Denver.
Being
He
arrested
studied
for drunk
architecture
driving,
at Texas Tech
and
University
also
while
for
continuing to play
allegedly
music.
assaulting
But eventually the
Cassandra,
pull of his
although
passion
no
won out,
charges
and he
were
dropped out in
filed.
1963
The man
to
who
pursue a
once sang
full-time
about
music
peace,
career in Los
nature,
Angeles.
and harmony
After playing the
was
folk
fighting
club circuit
private
for a couple of
battles
years,
he couldn't
he landed a
seem to
spot
win.
in the Chad Mitchell
In
Trio,
wedding halls
which later
and movie
became known as
soundtracks.
Denver, Boise, and
It even
Johnson,
became one of the
representing
most
John
iconic
Denver,
love
David
songs of the
Boise, and Michael
century.
Johnson.
Markings.
After eventually
It was
parting
hard to
ways
tell
with
if
the
he
group,
barely had any
Denver
fuel
set
left.
out as a solo artist.
In conclusion,
releasing his
his
debut
aircraft,
album
it was
Rhymes
bad
and Reasons
ergonomics
under
because it would
RCA
require
Records
the
in
pilot to release
1969.
all controls to
Prior
shut
to
the
that,
valve off.
he had
But
self-recorded a
because
collection
those
of
weren't
songs.
this year
Among
alone,
them
his
a track
song
called
Country
Babe, I
Roads
Hate
Take
to
Me
Go,
Home
which
debuted
caught
on the
the ear of
Billboard
producer
chart.
Milt Oken.
Keep in mind
That
that
song
the
was
song
polished
written
and
in
transformed
the heat
into
of
the now
reconciliation,
iconic Leaving on a Jet Plane,
long before the
which gained
betrayal.
massive popularity
He
when
is
the
still
folk trio Peter,
celebrated
Paul,
and best
Mary
remembered
recorded it
today
and sent it
for his
soaring to the top of
contribution
the
to
Billboard
music
Hot
and
100.
humanitarian efforts.
Denver's own
in
recording
hearing the
also
most
reached
intimate,
#1 on the U.S.
vulnerable
Cashbox
moment of your
chart in
relationship
December of that
played on
same
loop
year.
for
What set
decades.
Denver apart in those
Annie
early
watched,
days was his willingness
distanced
to
herself,
hustle.
and in the end,
He personally
John
drove his
paid the
music
public
forward by
price.
embarking on Midwest
Full
tours,
shut-off valve in the
offering free
cockpit.
performances,
Their daughter
and
Jessie
visiting
Bell
radio
was
stations
raised
himself
in
to
part
get his
by
songs on
Denver
the air.
before his death,
This
and
grassroots
later
effort
kept
helped
out
him
of the
build a
spotlight.
loyal and enduring fan
John
base.
Denver was piloting a
His
Rutan
sophomore
Long
album
EZ,
Poems,
which is a light
Prayers, and
home-built
Promises,
aircraft,
released in
when it crashed
1971,
into Monterey
proved
Bay
to be
near
a
the
major
Pacific
commercial
Grove in
breakthrough,
California.
largely thanks
Annie's
to the
children,
phenomenon of Take Me
Zachary
Home Country
and
Roads.
Anna Kate, lived
His
with
new
their
manager
mother
Jerry
and stayed
Weintraub
private.
also played a significant
In all,
role,
John's
launching
love
an
life
aggressive
revealed
radio
cycles,
airplay campaign that
intense
expanded Denver's
devotion
reach
followed
far
by
beyond what he had
collapse.
achieved on his own.
May not be a
The early
decorated pilot like his
1970s
father,
became the golden
but
era
John
of his
Denver
career,
knew more than a thing or
producing
two about
back-to-back
flying.
hits including
A
Rocky
simple
Mountain
wisp
High,
of gray smoke
Sunshine
from the
on My
engine
Shoulders,
could rapidly
Thank
evolve
God
into
I'm a
fire.
Country Boy, and Annie's
Had he
Song.
repeated mistakes
Television
with a younger
opportunities
woman,
followed,
Cassandra
with
vanished
Denver
from the
making
media
frequent guest
thereafter.
appearances before
Today,
eventually
few
landing
pictures
his own
exist of her
hosting roles.
post-Colorado.
His
How is
holiday
it that a
special
man
Rocky
like him
Mountain
met a
Christmas
tragic
drew an
end?
audience of over
Was there
60
some kind of
million
sabotage
viewers
in
and
his
became the
aircraft?
highest-rated program
And often
on
faced
ABC at the
backlash
time.
for being a bad
He
drunk
even earned his
and
own
his
BBC
hypocrisy.
series, The John Denver Show.
The demand demand for the
collected
singer was
numerous
so
Grammy
high
and
that
American
soon
Music
enough he
Awards
had his
along
own
the way.
BBC
As
series
his chart
titled
success
The
began
John
to fade
Denver
in the
Show,
late 1970s,
until he started
Denver
hosting
shifted
some
his
eventually.
focus toward humanitarian work
Rocky
and
Mountain
environmental
Christmas,
advocacy.
his seasonal special,
He performed
Sunshine
benefit
on My
concerts for
Shoulders,
the Aspen Camp School
Thank
for the
God I'm a
Deaf,
Country Boy,
contributed to the
and
Aspen
Annie's
Valley
Song,
Hospital's
to name
capital
a few.
campaign, and maintained a
decorated their
450-acre
Aspen
property
home,
known as the
cooked,
Windstar
cleaned, and
Land
raised the
Conservancy
two
in
children
Aspen,
they adopted.
which served both as
She
his
kept the
home and as a
chaos away
sanctuary
from
for
the door.
wildlife and environmental
And she
education.
waited.
His
Rage.
personal life, however,
At one point,
was becoming
he described
increasingly
Cut
turbulent
waited for him to come
during the
home
painful
from
division
tour.
of assets that
From the
followed his divorce
studio
from Annie.
from the
Denver
cameras
admitted to an extraordinary
and the
act
women
of anger,
and the world.
attempting to cut their shared
But the success
marital
of this
bed in
album
half
is
with a
also due to
chainsaw.
the efforts
Those
of his new
close to the
manager, Jerry
situation revealed
Weintraub.
that this was
John
triggered
Denver
by Annie
reached
having
new
cut
heights,
down several
securing
trees
his
on their Aspen
popularity in the
property.
early
Though
70s with
nothing
hit
justified
songs
the outburst.
Rocky Mountain High.
Several years
The
after
album
the
broke
divorce,
through the charts,
Denver found love
especially
again with
Take Me
Australian
Home,
actress
Country
Cassandra
Roads.
Delaney, whom
Take
he
Me Home,
encountered while
Country
touring
Roads hit
Sydney
the
in
airwaves
1985.
1971
They married in
and changed
1988,
everything.
and in May of the
The lyrics,
following
the
year
melody,
welcomed a
the
daughter
nostalgia,
named Jessie Bell.
It was all too good
But history
not to
repeated
catch on
itself,
fire.
and the
Which
relationship
continued to support him
deteriorated
even
rapidly.
into his later
By
years.
1991, the
Which
couple
was
had
released in
separated,
1971,
with Cassandra
was a
publicly
commercial
describing
success.
her ex-husband as a
What many
vindictive
people
bully.
don't know about John
Many
Denver
who followed his
is
story
that he did
believe
most
that
of the
this second
promotions
failed
by
marriage
himself,
deepened the
who
personal
popularized
struggles
the
that would come
song
to
and
define
even
his
topped the
final
Billboard
years.
Hot
In
100.
1992, he
Oken
faced
had
his
also
first
become
drunk driving
Denver's
charge,
producer,
and the
along with
following
the
year,
folk
he
group
pleaded
Peter,
guilty
Paul,
after
and
crashing
Mary.
his Porsche into
He was
a tree,
adored on stage
landing
as
him on
kind,
probation.
funny, and
The Federal
warm.
Aviation
But
Administration
offstage,
subsequently
when the
ordered
lights
him to
and
remain
flashes
sober if he wished
a
to
plea
retain his flying
are.
privileges.
For John,
But he was unable
it
to
made him more
comply and was
restless,
ultimately
more
disqualified from
volatile.
operating an aircraft.
Which not only served as
Beneath
his
the
home,
warm and
but
gentle
also as a
image that had made
sanctuary
him
for
famous,
wildlife
John
and a
Denver
center
was
for
quietly
environmental
unraveling.
education.
He
Insiders
battled depression,
reveal that he only
carried
did it
deep
to get back at
insecurities,
Martell
and
after she
leaned
cut
heavily
down a
on
few of the
alcohol
family
and drugs
trees
as
they
a way
have
of
in
coping
Aspen.
with the pressures of his life.
John Denver faced a lot
He
of
even
hardships,
openly admitted to
which
having
led to
used
him leaning
LSD
on
and
alcohol
marijuana
and
during
drug
the
use
writing
for
of Rocky
comfort.
Mountain High.
They called
A
it quits
revelation
in
that drew considerable
1991,
criticism
with the
and
actress even
accusations
calling
of
her
hypocrisy
ex-husband a
from those who had
vindictive
long
bully.
admired his wholesome
But
public
like his
persona.
marriage to Annie
Though he was
Martell,
not a decorated
Denver and
pilot like
Delaney
his
also
father,
split.
Denver
And their
was a
He asked
passionate
for
and
a
licensed
restraining order
aviator
to
who
bar
genuinely
Cassandra
loved
from
being in
entering
the
his
air,
home during the
even
separation.
participating in a VH1
It
promotional
echoed
flying
patterns from his
contest.
first marriage.
Yet it was this very
Distance,
passion that
anger,
ultimately
and
cost him
control
his
issues
life.
resurfacing
To understand what
under
happened
the
on that final day,
resurfacing fame.
it helps to know a little about the
Meanwhile,
aircraft he was
in
flying.
those years, the
Unlike a
headlines
car that can
changed.
simply be pulled to the
The
side
folk
of the
hero
road,
with the-
a
and even
plane
when
facing
fans
an
would
engine
speculate
fire
about
requires
Cassandra,
precise
too,
and immediate
she
action.
remained out of the
Aircraft are
headlines.
equipped with a fuel shutoff
One of the more
valve in the
popular
cockpit,
ones is the
specifically
wrong
designed
placement
to
of
cut
the
off
fuel
supply
selection
and starve a
valve,
fire before
placing it
spreads,
behind the pilot's
buying the
left
pilot
shoulder.
enough time to find
The
a safe
first year
landing
saw
spot.
nearly
On October 12, 1997, John Denver was piloting a Rutan Long
He wasn't
Easy,
doing all
a
of
lightweight
these
home-built
to chase
experimental
civic credit.
aircraft, when it
He
plunged
truly
into Monterey
believed
Bay
in
near
action.
Pacific Grove,
He
California.
even won awards
He was just
such as
53
Reagan's
years old.
World Without Hunger
Investigators
Award.
uncovered several
Patriotic,
contributing
yet
factors.
progressive,
The fuel
opposed
selector
to
valve on the
war and
aircraft had been
inequity.
installed in an awkward position
contributions
behind the
stuck.
pilot's left shoulder,
Music and
making it
activism
nearly impossible to
intertwined.
operate without releasing
Because
the controls
when the world
entirely,
mourned Denver,
a serious
the singer
ergonomic flaw.
activist, few saw
Additionally,
him
the
as
fuel
Annie
gauges
saw
were
him.
poorly designed,
He entered
with no
rehab,
clear markings
spoke
to indicate
publicly
how
about
much
his
fuel
drinking,
remained,
and
making it
acknowledged
difficult to know
depression
whether the
in
tank was
interviews.
running dangerously
His
low.
1994
The aircraft, in
autobiography,
short, was
Take
poorly
Me Home,
engineered,
came
and
as a
those
kind of
design flaws
confession.
played a significant
In it,
role in the
that
tragedy.
Annie's song
However,
was the
investigators
emotional
also
core of
noted
his
that
art.
Denver himself had failed to
He
carry out
reportedly
certain
tried
pre-flight
therapy.
safety checks,
He toured
meaning
less
the crash
in the
cannot be
mid-90s,
attributed to the plane's
while
shortcomings
artists
alone.
questioned his alcohol
John
use,
Denver paid
his
the
mood
ultimate
swings,
price for a
and his
combination of
relentless
mechanical
touring.
failure and human error.
And Take
Yet
Me Home,
despite the
Country
painful
Roads
and
created
complicated
an
circumstances
immediate
of his
emotional
death and his
bond
personal
to place
struggles,
and belonging.
John Denver's
But just
legacy
as we saw
endures with
earlier in the
remarkable
video,
warmth.
that public persona
His music
created
continues to move
dissonance with
people
his
across
private
generations,
life. For Annie,
and his
the music never
humanitarian
left
and
her.
environmental
Annie's
contributions
song
left a
remained
lasting
a
mark on the
Pandora's
world.
box of memory.
In recent times,
She
Take Me
surfaced
Home
again
Country
on the
Roads returned to the
Mobituaries with Mo
Billboard
Rocca
charts after being
podcast,
featured in a
her
Super
most
Bowl
recent
commercial.
public
And a
platform.
theatrical tribute
She
to his
didn't
life and
sue
music
over
is set to
royalties,
captivate audiences
didn't
once
demand
more,
legacy
proof that his
control,
songs remain as
but she
timeless and
carried the
resonant
story.
as ever.